listening to a Hope 1032 podcast.
I'm Collett Smart, and I'm a psychologist, a teacher, and your host on Raising Teens. I'm also a parent, and I'm in the middle of raising my own teens and young adult children. I know that raising teens can be fun and busy, but also terrifying and even lonely. I've experienced all of these emotions, sometimes in the same day. On this podcast, I'm joined by well-known experts, and we chat about some of the most common questions I get asked about raising teenagers in my own work, and even some questions I have myself. I have such hope for this generation of young people. So each episode is full of support and practical advice. I love seeing all your questions come in. So each season, I focus on some that teachers, parents, and carers have raised. We're all caring for the teens we love so much. So please keep sending in your ideas and questions through my Instagram and Facebook page or via the Hope 1032 podcast webpage so we can support this generation of teens together. Hello there, it's Collett here, and welcome to another mini episode on raising teens. So as promised, I thought I would break down some of the gem thoughts that Hugh and I spoke about in the last episode. And I think one thing I always look for when I work with clients and families is something that is evidence-based. So really, what that means is I want to know that there's research behind what I'm saying to show that this actually helps you. And so it's very well known by mental health professionals now that all of the GEM thoughts, so gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness that Hugh and I spoke about and that Hugh speaks about extensively in his book, which is the core of the Resilience Project, GEM thoughts are backed by evidence. I'm going to break down each of these one by one in this mini episode. Now, I don't want you to feel as though you need to do them all at once. Please just pick one or two by the end of this mini episode and think, are those the two that would work well for my family, where my family is right now, and the way I know my teenagers and myself and our schedule? I'm going to try and work on those two this week. So let's start with the G. G is gratitude. And in positive psychology, the research around gratitude shows that it's very strongly and consistently associated with greater happiness. Gratitude really goes beyond just the idea of good manners. So please and thank you, although we want our children to have manners. Gratitude really takes quite a lot of awareness and quite a lot of effort, if I'm honest. I mean, even as an adult, it's something I have to remind myself to think about and to practice and be aware of. It's because our bodies feel so much more comfortable in just scanning and planning for the worst. So it's quite hard to focus on what we do have, even when things are going well. We're often looking ahead at what could go wrong today or in this meeting or with our child rather than focusing on what could go well. And so the word gratitude comes from a Latin word which means grace or graciousness or gratefulness, depending on the context. But really, gratitude, I think, is all of those meanings. Gratitude is a thankful appreciation for what we receive. So whether it's tangible or intangible, something we can hold or something that we know we have in our lives that you can't actually pick up or touch. But it's about acknowledging that there's goodness in our lives. So it's a process where we recognize that there's a source of goodness that is at least partially outside of ourselves. So it helps people very often connect with something larger than themselves as an individual, whether it's another person or it's nature or it's a higher power. And particularly if you're a person of faith, that would be where you would often turn to profess your gratitude. So there's a fascinating study where people were split into three groups. One group wrote about things they were grateful for that had occurred during the week. The second group then wrote about daily irritations or things that had not made them happy that week. And a third wrote about events that had affected them, but not really with any emphasis on positive or negative. So after 10 weeks, those who wrote about gratitude were more optimistic and felt better about their lives. Surprisingly, they also exercised more and had fewer visits to the doctor than those who focused just on the negatives. And so when we look at a Harvard report on gratitude, they say gratitude has a whole lot of benefits for us. It unshackles us, they say, from toxic emotions, emotions that are bad for us, that are not good for our health, our mental health, our bodies. Gratitude also has this lasting effect on the brain. It improves our health, as we've already heard, and it builds strong relationships. So then how do we cultivate gratitude on a regular basis, and particularly with our teenagers, without making them want to roll their eyes and go, oh, mom or dad or grandma, this again, why are we talking about something to do with me being thankful? An example might be, as an adult, we first have to work on that ourselves. I'm always talking about modeling because it's something I'm always practicing. I do not have a handle on modeling. It's still something I'm trying to do. So practicing writing a thank you note. We would nurture a relationship with another person through an email, but a lot of our teens prefer text. Encouraging them, nudging them gently, text grandma for her birthday, but text grandma to say thank you for what you received for your birthday, or send your friend a direct message saying how much you enjoyed last night. And so often they might say, that's so lame, why are you telling me to do that? But we can actually just talk about some of the things we're doing and nudge them in that direction. We also might just thank someone mentally. And if you've heard me talk about dinner table conversations, this is something you could practice once a week. What is something you're thankful for this week? And out loud, you're talking about something that someone has done nice for you that week, whether it's a teacher or your sports coach or whatever it might be, something you're thankful for. Keeping a gratitude journal. Some teens really do love this, but even as adults, some of us practice it. I just want to caution that it's not something that you need to do every day of the month, 365 days of the year. There are annual gratitude journals, but I usually advise teenagers and parents to try and only do this for about 2 weeks at a time. This is because very often we can overdo something and then we can become bored with it or it loses its effectiveness. So usually around 2 weeks of practicing gratitude or gratitude journals or gratitude jars where you as a family write something you're grateful for every night at the dinner table. You might not say it out loud, write it, put it in your gratitude jar, and at the end of the 2 weeks at one dinner table conversation, you actually read them out. And what we see in the evidence is that practicing gratitude every day, just for a 2-week period, actually pulls the brain out of negative thinking ruts. They see changes in the brain. Some people might call this counting your blessings as well, sitting down, talking about your blessings, whatever works for you as a family and the words that work for you, please do that. So some practical ideas. If your children are struggling to think of things, you might say to them, let's think of people who made you laugh today, or 2 nice things that happened today. Write the people who love me on your note. Talk about a favorite song or a movie or a book that you love. Any tastes or smells or yummy food that always smells nice or that you enjoy eating when you're out with your friends. People or things in your life that make your life easier. Your sport coach, a doctor, a firefighter. And your everyday things, like having trains and buses to get around where you live that might make it easier for you, or being able to get to a grocery store that isn't too far from you, or a sports team that you love to watch or that your team loves to watch and cheer for. That is something to add. Your teens will be able to find something out of that. If you are someone who has a faith or you belong to a faith community, very often when you pray, you will find that your prayer cultivates gratitude. Now, the second gem thought is E, empathy. And having empathy not only makes us happier as human beings, but it also creates a culture of care and nurturing that we need in order to grow into our best selves. What's fascinating is that empathy is wired into our brains. And it turns out that there's these cells in our brains called mirror neuron. When I talk to teenagers, I say, what can you hear a word familiar in there? Mirror. And that's a reflection. You see your reflection, or it reflects something back to you. Neurons, is something in your brain. These mirror neurons, it's fascinating because it's as if we're doing the same task as another person is doing, or we're feeling what they are feeling. That is when we see these mirror neurons firing. So a good example of this is asking your teen, do you ever really cringe when you're watching someone on TV get hurt? Or have you ever experienced secondhand embarrassment? That's because your mirror neurons are going wild and you're feeling their pain on a neurological level. That's often a good way to describe empathy as humans, and that we have a lot more in common than we think we do. But true empathy involves being able to take the perspective of others. Now, we need to remember that before around the age of 7, children aren't able to view the world from somebody else's perspective. So that is why young children struggle to share. It's normal for our children. And some of our teenagers, you don't suddenly at your 7th birthday develop empathy or the ability to share. It's something that's gradually developing. Even as adults, we're still learning. So what's interesting is that we often have empathy for those that we see as part of our in-group. We can tend to see all wonderful things about people who we know and we care about. We tend to be a lot more forgiving when people have mishaps or they say the wrong thing. We just kind of say, well, yeah, they're having a bad day. It's because we give them grace because they are similar to us. Very often we attribute negative intentions to people in an out-group, so people who are different to us or not in our circle. So the best way to teach empathy is actually through modeling, again, and it's important for us as adults to fight this tendency in ourselves to only give empathy to those that we see as similar to ourselves, similar in race, in gender, in community, in religious beliefs, in political ideas or ideals. It's important for us to give empathy to people who think differently to us. That is true empathy. Learning empathy can be an intentional process, however. So I don't have true empathy. I'm being honest with you. I'm still learning how to be an empathetic person. And I think we all are as human beings. I wouldn't say anybody's nailed empathy. And that's important. That's important to be vulnerable with our kids. So tuning into the emotions of others, so trying to pick up the nonverbal cues of others. Talk to our children about what you noticed in how their friend's facial expression was when they said something, or how their siblings' facial expression was, or how you noticed your child's body language when you raised your voice. You actually verbalize how you are noticing something about them or someone else, verbalizing empathy. So ask them, what would you think if you were put in a situation like that? So try to help your child to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. Take a step back and communicate kindness instead of irritation or anger. And again, the most effective method for teaching empathy to children is actually to show them empathy. In that, we're practically modeling to them what it's like to understand someone else by showing them what it feels like when someone demonstrates empathy to them. And we are the ones who can demonstrate that. We could ask open-ended questions. We might say things like, I can see you feeling so frustrated that your team lost today. It can feel really disappointing when it happens. So you're showing them love because it puts love into their hearts when they know that you are trying to feel or show that you understand the pain that they're going through. And then the last of the 3 gem thoughts is M, which is mindfulness. There's strong evidence that links mindfulness with positive emotion, enhanced life satisfaction, compassion, and overall physical and mental well-being. That's what the research says. Psychologist Leah Waters points out that mindful parenting, again, models effective ways to deal with relational conflicts, stressful situations, And again, mindful parents are coaches to their kids and how their children can become more mindful. A quick technique for incorporating mindfulness into our everyday lives is used by Goldstein, and he has developed the STOP acronym. So the S actually means just stop, pause. T is take a breath. Then the O is the observe. So being aware of your surroundings, notice what's around you, what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can see. Then notice your feelings, the feelings in your body. Notice your thoughts. You might even say them out loud to your child. It sounds like you might be really nervous about this situation. What do you notice happening in your body right now? So it's teaching them to notice what's going on in their bodies when they are feeling a certain emotion. And then practicing breathing, counting breaths, teaching children or teenagers when they lie in their beds at night, put a small stuffed toy or a pillow on their belly, or put their hand on top of their belly and notice their bellies going up when they inhale and in when they exhale, and counting those breaths. This is important to do on times when your child is relaxed, because when they are stressed, learning to suddenly breathe and relax yourself is very difficult to do. And then the final letter in STOP is P, which means then proceed with your day, or proceed to the next step. So those are just a few of my reflections on GEM thoughts and the activities around GEM thoughts. But like I said in the beginning, please don't feel like you need to do them all at once. Pick 2 that you might try this week. I think I'm going to practice STOP. I'm especially going to do some of the breathing because I haven't done that for a while and that I've got out of practice with that. And I think I'm going to stand outside once a day, maybe in the morning with my coffee, just for a minute. And I'm going to notice the things that I can hear and see. So which 2 do you think will work for you this week? The STOP? Will it be the gratitude journaling or chats at your dinner table, talking out loud about others who are different to you in kind ways? What are you going to try? I would love to hear what works for you and your family. So add a comment in the notes or send me a message and let me know what's worked for you. Until next time, keep parenting with your child's future adult in mind.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.